Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 283 of the Pulp Writer Show. My name is Jonathan Muller. Today is December the 23rd, 2025, and today we are doing an audiobook sampler platter for 2026. Before we get into that, we will have Coupon of the Week and an update on my current writing, publishing, and audiobook projects. First up, let's do Coupon of the Week. This week's coupon code, which is the final coupon code of 2025, will get you 50% off the audiobook of Shield of Power, book number 6 in the Shield War series, as excellently narrated by Brad Wills at my PayHip store. And that coupon code is POWER2025, POWER 2025. And as always, you can find the coupon code and the links to the PayHip store in my show notes. And this coupon code will be valid through January the 5th, 2026. So if you need a new audiobook to listen to as we head into the new year, we have got you covered. Now an update on my current writing projects. I am pleased to report that Wizard Assassin, the 5th book in the Half-Elven Thief series, is now available. And you can get it at Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. By the time this episode goes out, it should have been out for a while. So the initial response has been very good. So thank you everyone for that. Now that Wizard Assassin is out, my main project is now Blade of Storms, the 3rd book in the epic fantasy Blades of Ruin series, and I am currently 22,000 words into it. If all goes well, I would like to have that out in January, but there's a chance it may slip to February, so we will see. My secondary project is Cloak of Summoning, and I am 2,000 words into that, and if all goes well, that will be my main project after Blade of Storms is published. In audiobook news, Cloak of Embers, as excellently narrated by Hollis McCarthy, is finally out at all the audiobook stores. You can get it at Audible, Amazon, Google Play, Kobo, Chirp, my PayHip store, and all the others. It is 14 and a half hours long, so if you are looking for something to listen to during your holiday travels, I think that might have you covered. So that is where I am at with my current writing, publishing, and audiobook projects. And now onto our main topic, which is an audiobook sampler platter. Because I am recording this episode early, because I want to take the week off between Christmas and New Year's. So that means it's time to record the episode early. We will be sharing samples from the first book in the series of 4 different series. Dragon Skull, Sword of the Squire, as narrated by Brad Wills. Ghost and the Serpent, as narrated by Hollis McCarthy. Stealth and Spells Online Creation, as narrated by C.J. McAllister, and Half-Elven Thief, as narrated by Leanne Woodward. So hopefully you enjoy those 4 samples, and they might inspire you to go check out the audiobooks. And in the meantime, that is it for the main part of this episode. As always, thank you for listening to the Pulp Writer Show throughout 2025, and I hope you have found the show useful. A reminder that you can listen to all the back episodes on HTTPS, thepulpwritershow.com. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review on your podcasting platform of choice. Stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you all next week and next year. And so with that done, now here is the first of our audiobook samples.
The day after the duel, Gareth Arban awoke sore and battered with a throbbing head. The chill in the barracks didn't help matters either. February in the year of our Lord 1498 in the Northerland was not quite as bitterly cold as January or December, but it still wasn't warm. The squire's barracks was icy cold, though Gareth knew it was colder still in the courtyard. The brick he had taken from the fire last night before bed had been too hot to carry with his bare hand, but now it was cold to the touch. Gareth sat up, half expecting to hear the angry voice of Sir Tragan Volaris filling his ears. His back and shoulders twinged with stiffness and a dull ache, though they didn't hurt quite as much as they had last night. As he pushed aside the blankets, the cold air hit him like a slap, even though he had slept in a heavy tunic, a mantle, trousers, and thick stockings. The barracks room was dim. The shutters were closed, and in any event the sun wasn't up yet. The only light came from the massive hearth on the other side of the room, a few dying coals casting a sullen orange-yellow light over the floorboards. Gareth could just make out the shape of the other beds, the squires asleep beneath their blankets. He eased to his feet, feeling the chill of the floor even through the thick wool of his stockings. Taking care to make no sound, he crept towards the hearth. His eyes flicked to the far side of the barracks to where Crake slept. Gareth had a brief, intense vision of taking a chunk of wood and bringing it down upon Crake's head, but he banished the thought at once. It wasn't knightly. Instead, he stacked pieces of chopped wood in the hearth, Once they had been arranged to his satisfaction, he grasped the poker and stirred the embers until the wood caught fire. A considerable quantity of ashes had built up in the hearth over the last month, and Gareth knew it would have to be cleaned out soon. And that was something either the pages or Castor Marcane's servants usually did, but after yesterday's fight, Gareth knew that Sir Tragan would assign him and Craig that task, and then berate them the entire time. A fresh blaze sprung to life, and Gareth returned the poker to its rack, warming his hands against the heat. God and the saints, but it was bloody cold in the Northerland. Gareth had known that the winter in Castor Marcane would be cold, especially compared to the mild winters of Taliand and Talion. But knowing was one thing, experiencing it was quite another, and the chill always struck him like it had been made of razors. Gareth never complained, though. It would have been unknightly, and Craig would have never shut up about it. He felt movement behind him and turned, half expecting to see Craig creeping up behind him. Instead, Philip Emilius gazed at the fire, his usual thoughtful, sombre expression on his face. Philip was Gareth's age, 17 years old, and they had both been born in Talion in the same year, though Gareth was a few months older. They had known each other all their lives, though Gareth had seen less of Philip after Philip's father had accepted a benefice from Dux Constantine of the Northerland. Philip had his father's curly brown hair and his mother's cold blue eyes, and he could move in utter silence through the Northerland's pine forests. By comparison, moving quietly in the barracks was child's play. Gareth had only realized someone was behind him when he had felt the shift in the air. "Surprised you can stand up," murmured Philip, his voice a quiet whisper. Gareth frowned. "Why?" "Craig gave you quite a thrashing." Gareth felt his frown deepen. It was a draw, and I would have won if Sir Tragan hadn't pulled us apart. "If you say so," said Philip. "What are you implying?" said Gareth. "That I couldn't have taken him?" "Only that you should control your temper around Craig," said Philip. "I'd have an easier time holding my temper if Craig would keep his mouth shut," said Gareth. Philip raised an eyebrow. "And Craig knows that." "He shouldn't have said what he did about Lady Iseult," said Gareth. Philip clapped Gareth on the shoulder. "He also knows that you can't think clearly about her, so he knows just where to poke." "These taunts are not worthy of a knight," said Gareth. "We're not knights yet," said Philip. "And if you get into another fight with Craig, Sir Tragan's going to think up all kinds of inventive punishments. Myself, I don't mind. It's good exercise. You'd be happiest freezing in the woods and drinking ice melt," said Gareth.
Cana still did not feel well, but better than she had for the last few days. She never got sick, which was why her sudden illness had come as a surprise. Events earlier in her life had left Cana with remarkable good health and vigour, which she had used to good effect since. Still, she was flesh and blood, as frail as any other mortal, despite all the stories about her, which ranged from somewhat accurate to completely ludicrous. "I should stay," said Kylon on the first day she fell ill. No, it's just a bad cold," said Cana. She sat propped up in bed in their house in Malaray, a book open on her lap. The doors to the balcony were thrown open, letting in the cool breeze. The air in Malaray ranged from bracing to almost poisonous, depending where you were in the great city, but the house that she and Kylon had bought was close enough to the imperial citadel and the foot of the great mountains that the wind coming down from the peaks was sharp and clear. Hardly fair to those who had to live near the stink of the harbour and the river Megaros, but Cana had paid a lot for this house, and the cool air was refreshing. "Are you sure?" said Kylon, sitting on the edge of her bed. He took her hand, which felt cool and hard against her feverish skin, and she felt the faint prickle of his water sorcery. Kylon's power permitted him to sense the emotions of anyone around him, save for her. It only worked if he was in physical contact with her. Kena gazed at her husband of almost 2 years. He was a big man, wide-shouldered, but muscled in such a way that gave an impression of leanness. His hair and eyes were brown, his skin several shades darker than hers. Kylon looked like what he was, a Kyratian noble exiled from his homeland who had married an imperial noblewoman. Granted, while he was an exiled Kyratian noble and she was an imperial noblewoman, there was quite a bit more to the story. "Entirely," said Kena. Usually, if she looked at him or touched him long enough, she started running her hands through his hair and down his back, which sent her thoughts to more sensual directions. Now she just wanted her headache to abate long enough to sleep, which was indeed proof that she was ill. "It's just a cold, and I'll be better in a few days. Besides, you should be there. The Emperor appreciates your advice." Kylon snorted. "It's your advice the Emperor appreciates. He prefers to rant to me about the problems of governing the Empire."
The technology had grown far more refined in that 15 years. Even, he reflected, in the years since he had been fired. As if to prove his point, the computer chimed again, and a notification appeared on one of the screens. "Installation complete," announced Tammy. "The Sevenfold Sword Online client has been installed to secure Partition 5, linked to your masked account, and protected with full encryption, password, fingerprint, and voice authentication." "Thank you," said Carver, turning his chair to face his keyboard and mouse. He clicked on the icon that represented Secure Partition 5, and a password prompt appeared. Carver entered his password, swiped his fingerprint over the reader, and then read aloud from the text box that appeared on the screen. He had chosen the most secure voice analysis setting, so he had to read 4 lengthy sentences before the system decided that it was his voice and not a high-end AI clone. Given what Carver had discovered about the game, he couldn't be too careful. The partition unlocked, the icon for the Sevenfold Sword Online client appearing on his screen. Carver took a moment to adjust his chair. After much experience and trial and error, he found that he was most comfortable during an extended NIVR session in a reclining position. The newest headset models, including the Diadem, included low-level muscle stimulation during sessions to counteract the bad effects of too much sitting, but Carver remained dubious about that. "Tammy," said Carver, glancing at the time display in the corner of his monitor. It was just after 2 in the afternoon, and Uncle Royce would arrive home shortly after 6. The human brain could process NIVR inputs much faster than normal stimuli, which meant that time within Sevenfold Sword Online ran at a 5x multiplier. For every 5 hours that passed in the game, only 1 passed in the real world. "Set an alarm for 5:45 p.m. to notify me inside the game." "Acknowledged," said Tammy. "Would you like me to launch the Sevenfold Sword Online client?" Carver took a deep breath. A year since he had been fired. A year since he had been inside the game. A year since he had seen something that forced him to act. "Yes," said Carver. "Launch it now, please." "Launching," said Tammy. A faint hum came from the Diadem headset as it powered up. And then, the world went white as the game loaded.
Riva opened her eyes. Something was wrong. For a long moment, she did not move. Nothing seemed amiss. The small room where she lived was quiet. The accumulated heat of the day had faded, and it was almost chilly. No muffled sounds came through the floorboards beneath her sleeping pallet. That meant it was late enough that most of the drinkers in the common room below had either drunk themselves into a stupor or had gone home. Her shutters were open a few inches to allow the night breeze to enter, and a dull red light shone through them. The moon of fire was in the sky tonight, casting its harsh glow over the towers and tenements of Tar Carmathion. The stillness of the night hung over the city. Riva ought to go back to sleep. She sat up and reached next to her pallet, her fingers coiling around the handle of a dagger. Riva often had the feeling that something was wrong, and she was still alive because she had listened to it. She rose to her feet in silence, the dagger grasped in her right hand. In the dim red light, she could just make out her room, her sleeping pallet, the locked and trapped chest against the wall, the wooden chair, the rack for her armor. The floorboards felt warped and uneven beneath her bare feet, but Riva made no sound as she moved across them. It was a skill hard learned. She had not survived the last 12 years by making noise at inopportune moments. The door to the hallway was closed and locked. Riva had made the lock and installed the door herself. Truth be told, it was sturdier than the surrounding wall. Yet, when she had mounted the door, she had taken care to leave a half-inch gap between the floor and the door itself. The irritating consequence was that she often heard noises filtering in from the rest of the tavern. The useful result was that she had an easier time listening to anything happening in the hallway. She leaned against the door, pressing her ear against it, and listened. The faint rasp of her breathing, the pulse thrumming through her veins, the creak of the old building. And then, faint but distinctive, the rasp of a claw against the floorboards. Riva opened the lock on her door, turning it as slowly as possible. The work she had put into making it paid off. The bolt turned without a sound. She eased the door open just far enough that she could slip through, the dagger held low at her side. The smell hit her nose at once. The tavern never smelled very good, save for mornings on the days when Mizra made fresh bread. But there was a new odor in the hallway, a faint hint of rot accompanied by a dry, dusty smell, like a lizard's scales. There was a window at the end of the corridor above the stairwell, and dim red moonlight leaked through it. The elven half of Riva's heritage let her make out the walls and the doors in the hallway in the faint light. A red shape moved down the corridor. Long practice kept Riva motionless and forced her breathing to remain slow and steady, despite her alarm. A kobold. Probably it had come up from the vast maze of ancient catacombs that sprawled beneath the streets of Tar Carmathion. Entire tribes of kobolds and goblins lived down there, along with worse things. Sometimes the kobolds and goblins crept to the surface in search of captives to take back as slaves, or as cattle. One of the reasons kobolds were not welcome in Tar Carmathion was their regrettable tendency to capture and eat others. The creature must have come up through the cellar. Riva had told Tobel again and again they needed to better secure the entrance to the catacombs beneath the tavern. He had said he would get around to it, but he never had, and they were paying for it now.